Welcome to Partners Beyond Parenthood, the podcast that helps new parents thrive without losing themselves. I am so excited to have you here with me today, and who better to introduce themselves than the one and only. Go ahead, Drew.
Yes, hello Saba, and hello everybody. It is nice to be here today. So yes, my name is Drew Griesel, and I am a fitness, health, and wellness coach. I have been in the physical activity space for a while, but I actually started in self-defense. So I am a Krav Maga instructor and have been for quite a while. But during the pandemic, as happened with many people, I kind of had a shift in focus. I observed people around me with declining, we'll just say wellness. And so like mental wellness, physical wellness, a lot of people were very negatively impacted by the lockdowns, by not being able to be with loved ones and engage in activities that made them happy and gave them fulfillment. So I had a shift from self-defense initially to fitness, and then from fitness, I realized that people weren't going to achieve their goals without addressing all of these other aspects of their life. So I really embrace a whole body wellness. So I look at things like not only physical activity and nutrition, but quality of sleep, look at things like relationships, look at things just like normal everyday life habits that maybe we used to have that we've moved away from as a society that contribute to general health and wellness. So that's kind of on the more professional side of what I do. On the other side, I am a husband and I am a father. I have a 5-year-old boy and I have another boy that will be 2 in just a couple of weeks. And
Wow.
So I kind of got into the health and wellness space coinciding with my first son turning 1-year-old. So I was able to take all of the things that I was learning and all the things that I was starting to coach my clients on and kind of look at my own life and look at myself as a father, look at myself as a husband, look at my role as a parent, and realize that there is so much connectivity between all of the sort of general life optimization things that I'm learning and that I'm now coaching my clients through that apply very specifically to my own life. And so I've been kind of my own experiment along this journey as well in trying to be the best husband and father that I can be along the way, which is indeed a great experiment for everyone, but using my specific knowledge base that I've been pursuing to work towards that.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. Sounds like you do indeed have a very holistic approach. Of course, COVID, I think, kickstarted a lot of different thoughts, a lot of different lifestyle changes for many people, seeing it not just impact yourself, but other people as well. You said it coincided with your son turning 1. So at that point,
Yeah.
obviously, changing things for yourself can also speak volumes in how you're going to be as a father, like you said, and not just a father, but also a partner.
Mm-hmm.
I do want to ask, obviously, you said that COVID kind of impacted your choice to kind of go down this route, but was that something that you were interested in before, or how did you actually make that shift and be like, this is what I'm going to, pursue at this point?
So teaching self-defense, there's a physical activity component to it, right? You get a bit of a workout if you go take a martial arts class. And I had private clients that were taking self-defense training from me. And then I had people ask me to help them with fitness because I knew something about fitness. And then as I started to do private coaching for people in fitness, I realized that one, there's a lot I didn't know. Like my knowledge was very basic when it came to fitness, to body mechanics, to the inner workings of the human body in regards to how it responds to physical activity. And most people are pursuing fitness because they want some kind of body composition goals, right? They want to build muscle or lose fat. Usually it's one of those two things. And there's a lot more to that than just working out. And so as I started to pursue the knowledge and got my credentials in fitness and nutrition, I realized that there is so much more. And then I started to do research on my own, and I just kind of went down this rabbit hole and realized that if people want to optimize their physique, they have to start way outside of just exercise. Exercise is really important for so many things, but there's so much more to it than that. And then with the self-defense studio, it's owned by my best friend, and we were fighting tooth and nail to keep it from closing. And at some point that meant we were just leading Zoom classes, and it's really hard to teach a Zoom self-defense class.
Right.
Yeah. So that kind of got me to cross the threshold of teaching workout classes instead of just a self-defense class.
Okay.
And then, you throw in the mix of being a parent, and I can
Yeah.
see, I'm a new father. My wife is a new mother. I think women have a pretty tough gig in the entry into parenthood, and
Yeah.
I wanted to be the best support person that I could for my wife, and I really didn't know how to do that. And so I just kind of used the knowledge that I was gaining in the wellness space to kind of figure out, okay, well, there are all these things that we do that are good for us physically, but also good for us, mentally and emotionally. And we're both sleep deprived. She's got all the hormonal fluctuations going on. So, what else can I learn that will help her and that will help us and that will help us to show up better for our son?
How would you say that what you practice now, or like essentially what you're coaching on, translates with your clients, and how is it either similar or different to your wife? Or do you actually use that a lot to, kind of design what you make for your clients?
So I also learned very quickly that I cannot coach my wife. So,
Good one.
yeah, that was a lesson learned very quickly. However, she is very open to conversation and she is very open to observation. So
Mm-hmm.
I love to share my knowledge with her, and I love to demonstrate some of the actions and habits that contribute to wellness, and kind of just bring it to the household.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of how I bring what I do to my wife, and then of course she makes her own decisions about what she wants to incorporate or to bring for herself.
And what are the things you think she's observed or, adopted from the conversations you've had that she thinks have been valuable?
Well, some of the simple things are just staying hydrated, right? It's amazing how much most people are dehydrated, and how being dehydrated can contribute to a lot of things like low energy and brain fog and low immunity, and just all of these things that we don't really think would be impacted by just drinking some more fluid.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's true. Even the flow of milk, I know that impacts it a lot as well.
Oh
So,
yeah.
particularly in the first few months or however long people or women want to breastfeed, that definitely impacts it as well. I know. I think I was drinking about 4.5 liters. Sorry, I don't do gallons of water a day, but it's a lot. It's like double of what I would normally drink
Yeah.
in a day. So, yeah, I mean, that's definitely very important. What is another thing that you say she's implemented from your general coaching, or just from her understanding or seeing what you do, that she's found helpful?
Well, one thing is, and of course we did plenty of research on this to make sure that it was okay, but she never stopped exercising. So before she became pregnant, she did CrossFit, and she was also
Awesome.
taking my self-defense classes. And we were very determined to make sure that that she could continue doing the things that she could continue doing. And she had both times she had a very good pregnancy.
Great.
And so there were no complications, and she was able to continue to take her classes. Like she was taking my self-defense classes up until she was 8 months pregnant. It was almost funny seeing her come in with her big old belly and hit and kick some people. But
Right. I'm very impressed with that. I
yeah.
actually did CrossFit as well throughout my entire
Okay.
pregnancy.
Okay.
So
Good for
that's
you.
awesome.
Yep.
It was tough. I think by month 7, I definitely started slowing down a lot.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
There were.
Okay.
I mean, particularly as the pregnancy increased, right? There were
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
some things that she couldn't do, or that it wasn't safe for her to do.
Okay. Yeah.
But
Got it.
she kept showing up and she kept moving, and part of how I could contribute to that was, one, encouraging her, and two, just making sure that I created an environment where she was able to continue doing that.
Right. Yeah.
And then it's kind of laughable to say this, but prioritizing sleep. So
It's not laughable. It's so important.
it is important, but as a new parent, it's laughable because you really don't have much control over that.
How did you guys navigate that, like in the first few months? Because those are, I mean, it really depends on the baby, but often the first 2 months can be quite, tricky because they just need to feed so often.
Yeah, and my wife did breastfeed for a year or so with both kids. And for me, as much as I couldn't support that, I tried to support everything around that. So if the kid wakes up, I'm the one that goes and gets the baby and brings her the baby, She feeds the baby. When she's done, I put
Hmm.
the baby back. Sometimes putting the baby back is a long process because they are
Yeah,
not wanting to go
yeah.
back.
Yeah, being very
So
comfortable on the boob, essentially. Yeah.
yeah, and then I take the morning. So once the household wakes up in the morning, I take now both boys and kind of get them what they need in the morning and get them situated until she wakes up.
Okay.
And so for me, it was taking as much as I could from what she had to do to
Hmm.
give her those extra moments of sleep, because as
Right.
you said, sleep is vastly important. It's a huge wellness thing that is free, and that a lot of people overlook. It's kind of the quintessential hack to have better health.
Right. And like you said, so many people either miss it or don't incorporate it well enough into their lives. But yes, I see what you mean. It's laughable as new parents, but it definitely it gets better. Also, depending on how you want to do it. I know we sleep trained our baby, and for us, that was the best thing we did. Now we have a
Hmm.
very regular routine, and while sleep is it's never consistent. I'm not going to say my baby goes to bed at a certain time and wakes up like clockwork. No, that's not the case. They're babies, they have needs, you always check, but it's given us a little bit more predictability to
Yeah,
understand and actually like take back sleep and like kind of the core of where everything else can build on top of.
yeah,
Did you also do sleep training?
we did. Yeah, we did
You
sleep
did.
training. So we signed up for a program for our first son, and we did that, and it worked well.
Hmm.
I discovered that he is very adaptable in about a 3-day period. So usually it takes 3 days of trying to do something different for him, and then he adapts
Hmm.
very quickly.
Okay.
So we did sleep training for him, and it went very well. And he's 5 now, and it has its ups and downs. And
Right.
sometimes he comes out of it and needs attention in the middle of the night every night for weeks, and then he starts sleeping through the night again. And so it's a bit of a roller coaster, but for the most part, it was successful. And then
Yeah.
same thing for the little one.
Yeah.
He sleeps pretty well.
I mean, I think it's important for people to hear that, sleep training, obviously, like it solves many problems, but it's not like 100% every single night. If you have that baby, amazing.
Yep, I
I
know.
haven't heard of that baby yet. Um, but yeah, no, I know in our case, it was really helpful. How do you think your perspective changed on the father that you thought you would be and the father that you are or have become?
Well, you had to ask me that question. So I always thought I was the most calm and patient person in the world. Like before I became a father, I mean, I couldn't remember the last time I got really upset.
Hmm.
Never yelled at anybody. That's just not who I am. Um, my kids test me every single day, and it's silly things, and I have to rein myself in all the time. And it's not that I have a temper. It's just sometimes you're like, hey, it's time for your bath. And then you're like, hey, it's time for your bath. And then you're like, hey, it's time for your bath. And 30 minutes later, you're still trying to get them into the bathtub.
Hmm.
I'm just like, what am I doing wrong?
Well,
So
nothing, but
yeah, so it's a lot different in that it's a constant test of my ability to observe my own behavior and make sure that I'm showing up in the way that I want to show up. And I always think back to this one moment. So it was my first trip to Japan. I was staying with this family that owns a traditional hotel over there, and they have a daughter. She was 3 at the time, and she was very grouchy in the mornings. She didn't want to eat her breakfast, and he would just smile and he would talk to her very gently and soothingly and get her to eat every single morning. I didn't know what they were saying. Um, but I just for whatever, and I was a long way from being a father at that time. I hadn't even met my wife yet.
okay.
Um, but for whatever reason, that just stuck with me. And I think back to that moment when I'm in moments of extreme frustration,
Hmm.
and the father's name was Masa, and I'm just like, just be Masa, just be Masa, just
The
just
mantra.
just yeah, just find your peace, and be calm through the frustration.
So, to confirm from what I've understood, it's essentially the level of patience. You thought you
Yeah.
would perhaps have a little bit more patience than you do, which again, I
Yeah.
know a lot of people struggle with that, right? It's
Hmm.
super difficult when you're literally thinking like, are we speaking the same language?
Yeah. Exactly. And I just thought, in my life, people do things that frustrate me, adults, and it's very easy for me to just be like, that's fine. It's either it's out of my control, so I'm just going to get over it very quickly, or I'm going to come up with a logical solution to this, and we're going to do that, and it's going to be fine. Like
Hmm.
that's kind of my approach to things as an adult. But with children, children that I have a responsibility for, it's I don't get to do that. I don't get to just be like, okay, I'm just going to walk away from this in many
Hmm.
cases because my
Right.
kid needs to take his bath because he's dirty. I don't want him to go to
Yeah.
bed super dirty, um, or eat food because my older kid, just doesn't like to eat. So if we
Oh,
don't convince him to eat food for every single meal, he would probably just not eat. So the patience that I thought was just there inherently for every interaction that I have gets sapped much more quickly as a parent, and that was
okay.
surprising for me.
And do you think that that has changed from when they were essentially like newborn, kind of infant, towards the toddler stage?
It evolves. So just as
Okay.
they are evolving, the ways in which I'm trying to figure out how to deal with certain aspects of their personality also has to evolve. So,
Yeah, no, that's fair. I mean, thank God everything evolves, right?
right.
Imagine staying
Yeah.
stuck in some of
Yeah,
those, but
absolutely. And you know, I'm I will say I am pretty good at pulling myself back. Thinking of
Mhm.
Masa with his daughter Kokoro, who is now 17 and actually spent the summer with us last year.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. But also being able to just take moments to appreciate all of the things that I do appreciate about them. So even when my older son is frustrating me about something, to just take a moment and think about all of the things that I absolutely adore about him. And there are so many, and it's very easy for me to do that.
Right. Sounds like you're integrating a lot of your wellness or holistic, well-being into this parenting role.
Yep.
Obviously, you yourself as a coach will also have evolved, have developed within the years because it's been a few now. What are things that you've additionally integrated into your life that you've learned from your coaching that you've implemented for yourself that you've seen that have helped you as a parent?
The biggest one is finding things that keep my energy up throughout the day. When my first son was born, I went from not drinking any caffeine to drinking a lot of caffeine.
Okay.
Kind of carry myself through the day because I had never in my life navigated the waters of that kind of sleep disruption. And so I relied on caffeine. And so some of the wellness practices that I implement with my clients that I've also brought to myself are specific to creating kind of a continuous energy throughout the day. So like we already talked about, one of them is hydration.
Hmm.
Another one is exercise, right? I mean, exercise for me is a no-brainer, but for a lot of people, it's just like, I don't have time. Well, make time, 10 minutes. You can find 10 minutes somewhere because even 10 minutes of movement is going to get those hormones going and get your mind going, and it's going to create its energy that's going to last you for a certain amount of time.
Hmm.
So having regular exercise actually I didn't even come up with this, but a friend of mine 3 years ago came up with, we're going to do 100 burpees every day. So for 3 years, I've been doing 100 burpees every day.
Wow, power to you.
Yeah, so that keeps me moving. Sometimes I do them all at once, and sometimes I spread them out throughout the day. But
Hmm.
it's just a great way for me to have accountability to move my body.
Hmm.
And then also walking. So just taking walks, even if it's a 5-minute walk, just getting up and moving, right? So
Yeah.
doing these things that contribute to having a kind of a constant flow of energy. Also, diet's huge in it, and I could spend an entire podcast talking about how to eat
Yeah.
for energy, but
Hmm.
just know that it's possible to eat for energy and eat in a way that supports your body, not kind of crashing after you eat, but instead having a nice steady flow of energy when
Yeah.
you want it. So just trying to do all of these little things and stack them on top of each other that create
Hmm.
a more constant state of energy, because
Yeah.
when I'm tired, I don't show up well for anyone, including
Hmm.
myself.
Yeah. Again, back to sleep, right? The
Yeah.
importance of sleep.
Yeah.
And I'd like to go a little bit into the relationship you have with your wife. Obviously, it
Hmm.
seems like you're doing a lot of things to be a great role model for your kids, just by the whole well-being aspect of it. How much time are you able to spend with your wife?
Not enough, as it turns out.
Okay.
But I'm very particular about how I structure my day to ensure that we at least do have some time. So my wife does not wake up early.
Mm-hmm.
So my mornings are for me. This is the only time I get for me, which is also
Mm-hmm.
very important for me and my mental health. I need my me
Yeah.
time.
Mm-hmm.
Once the kids wake up, which is usually somewhere between 6:30 and 7 in the morning, I take care of the kids until my wife gets up. Then she takes over. We go to work. Kids go to preschool, and we kind of tag team getting them home and dinner and all that. So we're together as a family in the late afternoon, early evening, but we're not spending time together in the married couple sense, right?
Right.
We're not talking to each other about our day very much, or if we do, it's greatly interrupted.
Mm-hmm.
Once the kids go to bed, that's our us time. So that time I reserve for her and I. It used to be that I would try to use that time to get a last workout in or go in the sauna or get some work done. And now none of all of that moved to the morning or somewhere else. So the time from when we finally get the kids to bed and when we go to bed is for us.
Mm-hmm. How many hours is that roughly
It depends on the day
a
and
day?
whether or not we've been good about following the timeline for bedtime and whether the older one actually stayed in bed.
Mm-hmm.
Ideally, it's a couple hours. More like an hour is probably our average. So,
Okay.
an hour a day is not very much. It's better than zero.
It is.
Uh,
I guess it sounds like you guys are making it very intentional to spend at least, even if it's just an hour together as partners, and you've moved it now to the mornings. I imagine that came perhaps from a point where you had to discuss that needed to change just to make sure that you had more time for one another, or how did that come about?
Honestly, it just kind of came about organically.
Okay.
I'm very structured in my time,
Hmm.
and I came to a realization at one point that we weren't taking time just to be able to talk to each other, even if it's just to catch up on our day or strategize on some things. And now my wife is delving into entrepreneurship, and so we talk a lot about her efforts there. But it was just a realization that came to me at one point that we didn't
Okay.
have dedicated time. It wasn't scheduled in, and I'm all about scheduling things in, or else they don't happen.
And
And
do you
so
feel that that has helped your connection with her, even if it is so short in the evenings?
it has. It absolutely
Okay.
has. In
Yeah.
fact, sometimes we even get a date night. So
Yeah.
my mother is very good about offering to help out when she can, and so every couple of weeks she'll take the kids for an afternoon and evening, and we will get to actually go have dinner somewhere and really talk to each other.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah, I mean that's so necessary. Like just getting out of that zone and, being you too again. You have to be so intentional about what you speak about. Otherwise, it's so easy to just fall back and talk about your kids or, kind of what needs to be done.
yeah.
So no, that's great. And also great that you have family nearby to help out with that, right? Um, so one thing you mentioned earlier is also that you kind of organically shifted, the time that you used to take yourself from the evening to the morning. Um, and here's a question I do generally like to ask. I've heard different things from people, but in terms of priorities,
Hmm.
how would you say you prioritize three things: yourself, your partner, and your kids in a scale from 1 to 3?
Oh, I got a stack rank, huh?
Uh huh.
Oh boy, that's a hard one. So here's where I find the challenge in answering that. My my love and and my desire to care for anyone is extended to my children and my wife above all others. But I also am a strong believer that if I don't care for myself first, that I cannot effectively show up for them.
Hmm.
And so I guess at the risk of sounding extremely selfish, I'm going to put myself on top and then my kids because they need that guidance, and then my wife.
Hmm. In all honesty, I hear very different things from, and here I have to say, I think it's also very much how people define what a priority is,
Hmm.
right? I do think it's extremely important to prioritize yourself, because if you yourself are not well, if you're not physically able, mentally sane, which, with hormones and everything that happens after, if you're not taking care of yourself, how are you going to successfully care for someone else? So in terms of actually prioritizing yourself, I think a lot of people default to saying, I don't prioritize myself,
Yeah.
because they're scared of what other people will say or think.
Right. And yeah, and I mean, I just said that, right? At the risk of judgment and sounding selfish, I prioritize myself, but I do that in the spirit of being able to effectively show up for others. So hopefully that
No,
balances the scales there.
no, I mean, and I think it's important that when you do that, or you do prioritize that, right? Or you say that that's what it is, that the intention there is to show up as a better person. And
Yeah.
from the get-go, that's what you've said is important to you, right? So I think it's also a good reflection of understanding that priority of choosing yourself is really important. And really helpful to be that father, the partner, etc. Because again, if you hadn't chosen the things that are important to you, you may likely not have shifted the evening hours that you were putting in for work to the morning, because you were like, you know what, I'm putting myself first because I can change around that time for my own self. But then I have the evenings to actually connect with my wife. That's super important to me. I'm trying to put myself, but also my relationship first, etc. And like make time to go out on date nights, etc. So again, you guys can be strong as a unit, which in turn is a cycle for your kids, right? So in a way, I'm actually kind of grateful you answered this way, just
Thank you.
because I think a lot more people can learn from it. I know as mothers, when I've asked this question, everyone's just like, mothers usually put themselves last. I know I've done this. And when I reflect on my day to day, I see that kind of happens, and it's not necessarily always healthy, right?
Yeah.
And I think there is that danger that you start losing yourself, right? And this is kind of what my podcast is also about, to kind of help parents thrive and realize that they don't have to lose their self or sense of self. And a lot of that starts by prioritizing themselves.
Well, and honestly, one of my biggest struggles as a partner in this endeavor of parenthood with my wife is to encourage her to prioritize herself. She is an amazing person, and her mother is her role model, and her mother would put herself behind 50 people to make sure that they're taken care of before she takes care of herself. She's getting better now that she's a grandma, but throughout life as the mother role model, that was how it was, and that was normal, right? Like you said, that's still normal. People do that, and so that's kind of the default. And I'll just share, like in the early days of parenthood for my wife and I, there was a couple of times that I was just like, okay, you need a break, and so I would book her a hotel room somewhere nearby and be like, you're just going to go away for a couple of days. You're going to be down the road. You're not going to be far, but I'm sending you and your sister to this hotel to just go relax for a weekend and, sleep when you can. And even that with permission, right, for her to leave.
Right. I was going to ask, how
really
is that? Yeah.
The first time I tried it, I got in trouble. But she went and she was like, okay, this was good.
Right. Yeah.
But it really took that push. And honestly, sometimes it still takes that push. But
as a mother, I can say it definitely does. First time away from my baby was super tough. And I think really having that kind of encouragement or, that push from your partner, the people who love you dearly, who just want the best for you, kind of hearing that from them and seeing it come from them is usually almost a lot more accepted, because if not, you kind of feel this guilt, like, how can I choose to be away, right? Whereas if the push is it's external, it almost becomes a little bit easier to digest and perhaps take up on that opportunity to actually just take that moment for yourself, which is super helpful.
It is, and it's important. And that was where, I kind of had to find this delicate approach, right, of saying, I need you to prioritize yourself so that you can show up better for us.
Right.
Because when you are constantly sleep deprived and low energy and don't have time to care for yourself, then that impacts, like I said, for myself, how we show up every day. Yeah.
No, that's awesome. I love that you did that. Again, testament showing just how much you care for your partner, your family, being a great role model and making sure that everybody is healthy reflects back on the work that you're doing or, trying to do for people to just be a wellness coach in every aspect. That's amazing that you essentially practice what you preach.
I try. And I've
don't
got
we all?
a new 10-week transformation program that I'm kind of beta testing right now.
Tell me a little bit more about it. Is this virtual? Is it in person? If someone's interested in it, how could they find out more about it?
Yeah, it's virtual. It's a self-paced program. It's an online program. So you just go sign up and there's a whole curriculum and it takes you through it. It's a 10-week transformation program broken down into 3 phases. Essentially within each phase, we introduce several wellness types of habits or activities. So when you get started, it's simple things like taking a very, very short cold shower. Because cold water therapy has amazing health benefits physically and mentally. It's things like acknowledging the rising of the sun on the start of the day because that has a hormonal impact on the body. Things like achieving, as you're drinking your water, a moderate level of hydration, some moderate amount of steps per day, and just simple things like that. So it starts out kind of easy, although everyone hates the cold showers, and then it builds on it. So week by week, the quantity increases, right? It's some more steps. Your shower goes up to 40 seconds and then a minute. It's building in more activities to your morning. So instead of just going outside and acknowledging the sun is up, it's building in some gratitude, building in some breath work. And then in the second phase, we add in some things like specific focus around dietary intake. It's not a diet, but just some specific focus. We build in an eating window, so kind of an intermittent fasting type of protocol. Little bits of exercise. It's not an exercise program either, but we do build in little bits of exercise and various other things that we stack in throughout the day. So it's not like it's okay, so you need 2 hours a day to do this. No, you just need a couple minutes here and a couple minutes there and a couple minutes there sprinkled throughout the day. And we start out manageable and we increase them week by week until they become, that they're most beneficial, whatever it is. So I think the cold shower, I can't remember, I think it ends at like 3 or 4 minutes.
Okay.
It's actually kind of pleasant, but in the winter time, or if I go off somewhere where it's cold, then it's not nice at all.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah. Try it.
Well, we actually just installed a cold plunge.
You did?
We did.
Amazing.
We did.
I have a cold plunge right over here in the corner.
Yeah, I mean, my husband has been not talking about it. We've done it quite regularly.
Okay.
And we've seen the benefits. We've, read about the benefits so much so that we're like, okay, we're ready to take that step and actually get a personal one. So we're very happy we did that. So
Yeah.
That said, I can also absolutely say I completely agree. Cold showers in general, that's what we started with. We've been doing that for many years, and now that's the next step. But
Nice.
in general, your program sounds very accessible, which I think is super important, right? There's a lot of boot camps and there's a lot of different programs out there, but it really sounds like this is something that people can ease into. I say ease lightly, but no, I think accessibility is so important for many people, right? Like the amount of time that they can put in and then just build on it gradually, like you said, that sounds really great. I'll make sure to add that in the show notes, just to link to that for the people that are interested.
Thank you. And
no,
I just
absolutely.
want to throw a quick comment in, since because of the demographic of your listeners, if there are any lactating mothers out there, don't go all the way into the cold plunge, because there is a condition where if you are lactating and you get your nipples into the water, it can be absolutely agonizing for hours and hours and hours. So
This is very interesting that you mentioned that. I have been looking for someone who could tell me more about cold plunging while breastfeeding, because I did it while breastfeeding.
Did you? Did you go all the way in?
I went all the way into the tragus nerve.
Okay.
I did, but I wasn't breastfeeding that frequently. I think we were down to maybe twice a day, so like kind of in the morning and evening, and I'd perhaps do it in the afternoon somewhere. I guess also time, like whatever feels right for you is what I've heard. I don't think, unfortunately, there's enough science-backed evidence to kind of say what's right, what's wrong. I personally didn't have any issues in terms of the flow or the pain.
Yeah.
But that said, it is good that you say that, because I'm sure you know a lot more than I do. So I would definitely take that into consideration, because that might not be the case for everyone, right? Like,
yeah, and
really
it's
listen.
an actual condition, and The name of it escapes me off the top of my head, but it is an
Uh-huh.
actual condition, and it actually happened to my wife, and
Ooh.
it was agonizing for her overnight. So an entire night, you know, we're talking
Okay.
about
Well,
prioritizing sleep. For an entire night, she was in, in agony, and yeah,
wow. I mean, I can't imagine what that's like, but for those listening, don't go all the way in.
yeah.
See
Or
what feels right though,
I mean,
but
it
don't go
worked
all
for
the way
you,
in.
so not necessarily, maybe not everyone gets impacted, but just be mindful. Just know that that's a risk.
I think, yeah, cold plunging is, I think, just at the beginning kind of its popularity, right? Like more and more people are speaking about it. I'm guessing you've also followed Wim Hof
Hmm.
with all the information that he has. It's also something that was instigated by my husband, which I'm
Okay.
really grateful for because he's, always looking for, I guess, a lot of little biohacks. That
Yeah.
was one of them, and just different kinds of meditation. But I love the fact that that's also something that you, I guess, incorporate in certain ways to your program because there are just so many different hacks that people don't know about and won't necessarily try unless they join programs such as
Yeah.
the likes of yours.
And the main idea with my program is one, like these are simple hacks, but they're incredible, especially when you stack them. So by the end of the program, you're doing kind of 12 different things.
Right.
Um,
So they essentially become habits,
they
right?
become habits. So that's the idea, is that, okay, it's a 10-week transformation, but you're not supposed to stop doing it on the 10th week, right? You're
Hmm.
supposed to say, okay, this is my life now. You know,
Yeah.
maybe because these are habits, I can take some days off here and there, and that will be fine because I'll go back to it because it's now a habit. But
Right.
that's the idea.
And I think that's exactly what you speak a lot about, right? That, this kind of like well-being, it's not just like you put it in here and there, but like it's a lifestyle.
Right.
It's a change that needs to happen to continuously feel that way. It's not just going to be like, okay, for 2 weeks or for 10 weeks, I'm going to do this and then my life has changed. No, it's a habit that you need to integrate and really
Yep.
incorporate to your life.
And the thing that is, if I'm tooting my own horn, the thing I like about my program is that everything in it, other than I have sauna as an optional activity because not everyone has
Hmm.
access to a sauna, but other than that, everything in it is free. Nothing in it costs money. It doesn't cost money. You don't have to buy a cold plunge because you can take a cold shower. It doesn't cost money to walk outside and observe the sun. It doesn't cost money to walk. Yes, there's a step requirement, so you need a pedometer to track your steps, but you can,
Hmm.
most people already have one in their phone or in their watch.
Right.
You could buy a cheap one on Amazon for $10. So for the most part,
Hmm.
it's things that you can just do.
Yeah. And I mean, if someone's serious about, wanting that change, like I think these mini investments are so worthwhile because that's just, I mean, it's very likely a small investment from the get-go is going to help you in the long run in terms of your healthcare, right? Which
Hmm.
in general, you're trying to prevent stuff as much as you can and not just get there and like have more of a reactive thing, but be very
Right.
proactive. So that's awesome. Um, so now that we've spoken about that, there's one thing I'd like to circle back to, which is family, kids in particular, and being a role model. How do you think your kids, like you're obviously you do a lot of activities that are very healthy, right?
Hmm.
How do you think you're seeing that within your kids?
Well, even though my oldest son doesn't like to eat food, if he
Uh-huh.
could live his life on potato chips, he probably would. But he still asks me when we're getting ready for meals. He asks me about protein because one of our biggest struggles with him is to getting him to eat enough protein.
Hmm.
And but he actually asked. He's like, "Okay, Dada, does this have protein in it?" So I'm like, "All right, that's cool. He cares about protein."
Right. Yeah, I
Um,
mean, the knowledge is so important.
yeah, and
That's awesome.
as much as it is distracting and disruptive, I do exercise and do some of my stretching and mobility routines with my kids around or my kids in the room with me
Hmm.
because I want them to see it. I want them to see it as just a normal thing that someone
Hmm.
does. Um,
How would you
so
say, does your wife also participate in some of the stretching or some of these things? Because I guess having a father as a role model for one thing, as a son is like you look up to your dad, but how or what does your wife do in those instances?
so she takes classes, so she doesn't do much of it at home. So
Okay.
she goes out to like these yoga classes where they do like weightlifting with yoga.
Okay.
She does CrossFit as well. So
Hmm.
they know that mama's going to the gym
Okay.
and they know what that means. So they see
Yeah.
that as well.
Hmm.
Um, but also my kid will watch me get in the cold plunge. He won't go in. I can only get him to stick his hand in. And
Right.
that's
Yeah.
fine. He's 5. but he sees it, right? He sees that it's uncomfortable and he sees me doing it.
Mm-hmm.
We go for walks now. And I try to get a morning walk in before the kids wake up. And I stack in a lot of my morning stuff. So as I'm walking, I acknowledge the rising of the sun, the start of a new day. I express some gratitude into the world, and I might throw on a weight vest so I get some, a little bit better exercise while I'm doing it.
Mm-hmm.
But a couple of times he woke up early, and I was like, okay, well, you want to go on a walk with me? And so I pull him in the wagon. And
Mm-hmm.
now when he wakes up, he wants to go on the walk with me. He's not walking, but he's still
Mm-hmm.
out there with me, and we'll do gratitude together. I'll ask him what he's grateful for.
Aw, that's so nice. I can only imagine that will have a long lasting impact on your son. Well, both sons, eventually. And well, I'm sure you'll be waiting for that walk and gratitude session. So let me not hold you back. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your journey as a father, partner, and wellness coach today. I wish you all the best with your new 10-week program and incorporating these great habits to model them for your family.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Saba. And I talk health and wellness all the time, but I don't always get to talk parenting. And parenting for me has become my life's passion because all I can hope for is that my boys grow up to be amazing people, and so that's my work now. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for tuning in and sticking around to the end. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. If you've just watched and enjoyed this video, I'd be so grateful for a like and if you'd hit the subscribe button. With your support, I'll be able to invite bigger guests and provide more value. If you're listening to the audio only, make sure to follow this podcast to get tips on parenting and partnership and hear inspiring stories from other parents as well. See you next week.